The order was determined by drawing beforehand, and Mr. Kramer was the winner, I suppose.
Is that what you call it?
Well,
I drew number one.
That's right.
That's good. That's good. Well, thank you, Harvey, for your agreeing to monitor the debate. And I'm just going to assume that we're going to pass this microphone back and forth. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, and thanks to the North Dakota Newspaper Association. I've participated in at least one of these before, but I don't remember this many people there. So you guys are doing something right. I appreciate your doing this for us. And for all the folks that came out, the irrevocable gift of your time really is perhaps the most precious thing you can give, especially in democracy. When you consider the cost of our freedom, it's tremendous that you would, I think, honor that by coming to a debate in May for an election to be held in November. I think it speaks volumes to the activism of our state, and it certainly speaks well of the Newspaper Association, whose job really, whose mission is to promote expression and freedom. I've had this opportunity now for about 16 months to be the only representative in the House of Representatives from the great state of North Dakota. And people ask me, how is it that a freshman, the only member from an entire state, how is it that you can make a mark in your first year in Congress? And I always tell them it's easy. You carry a great brand. And I get to carry the brand of North Dakota. And the famous North Dakota's favorite son and broadcast journalist Eric Severide from Velva once said that North Dakota is the rectangular blank spot on the nation's mind. And I'm here to tell you that today North Dakota is the rectangular stage under the nation's spotlight. And they're all asking every day. In fact, on my way out the door today, the whip of the U.S. House of Representatives, the Republican whip, said, "Wow, I see that you reached 1 billion barrels." Yesterday, we had a hearing in the Natural Resources Committee. There were 4 witnesses to talk about energy, jobs, and the trades, the skills trades. One of those 4 witnesses was Bismarck's very own Robert Fleur, who's the president of the National Electric Contractors Association. And another one of the witnesses was Mike Roll, from Micro Works and Dirty Jobs. And guess what they talked about for about 2 hours at our hearing? North Dakota. Every witness talked about North Dakota. Every member asked about North Dakota. And this happens throughout every hearing that we have in Washington. It's part of every conversation because people are curious about what's going on in North Dakota. And it used to be you'd go to Congress from North Dakota and your job was really to bring things back for the state. But guess what? Today, I get to go to Washington and tell them about our state and bring something to them. Common sense, the right set of priorities, a work ethic, a state that values the work ethic. And in a state that doesn't look to overregulate business, but doesn't look to create jobs by government imposition, but rather allow the private sector to create jobs. So I look forward to a rigorous debate. I thank my opponents for being here, for their willingness to step up. It takes tremendous courage to put your name on the ballot, and I look forward to a good night and a good next 6 months. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Jack Seaman. I suppose some of you are wondering, who is this guy? Well, my name is Jack Seaman. I'm the Libertarian Party candidate for U.S. House in North Dakota in 2014. I'm a businessman. I own a small business in Fargo called Mindak Gold Exchange. I buy and sell gold and silver. I'm a precious metals dealer. I'm also a husband to my wife and a father to my 2 great teenage kids. And I'm proud to say my son is graduating high school this year, and he's joined the Air National Guard, so good job for him. What is a libertarian? Some of you may be wondering that. What are you libertarian people all about? Well, I'll give you a very short answer, okay? Libertarians want maximum individual freedom and less government. And that means getting the government out of your business, out of your pocketbook, and out of your personal life. The reason I'm running is I'm like a lot of you and a lot of voters around North Dakota. I simply became fed up with the way our government was operating, or should I say not operating, in Washington, D.C. And so I figured the best way that I could get involved is to actually throw my hat in the ring and run for public office. And this is my first attempt at doing so. How am I doing so far? Yeah. Okay, just checking. This race for me is very simple, okay? The voters of North Dakota are going to have to make a decision. Do you want to continue to vote for Democrats and Republicans and send them back to Washington like we have for over 100 years and expect a different result? Or has the time come in North Dakota where we actually embrace a third-party candidate, a political outsider like myself, send me to Washington, and let's see what kind of change that I can get done in 2 years in Washington? I'm sorry to tell you, but we have some serious problems in our country. Things in North Dakota are great, but things in the U.S., we have some big issues. Maybe that's why 53% of voters don't identify themselves as a Democrat or a Republican. 53%. So I'm here tonight to say to that 53%, hi, I'm Jack. I'm the Libertarian guy. Learn more about me. We have an overreaching, oversized, out-of-control federal government. We're stifling under a pile of debt. We have an outdated, invasive tax system. We have government involved with regulating us all the way down to our daily lives. We need to change the conversation in Washington, D.C. about the proper role of the federal government in America. Give me 2 years, and I will guarantee that we will change the dialogue and change the conversation in Washington. North Dakota right now is the rock star state in the union. All eyes are on us. So let's show the rest of the country that we can step up and take the steps necessary to fix problems in the federal government. The first step, sending a Libertarian, a third-party candidate to Washington, D.C.
Please keep your comments.
I'd like to say thank you to the North Dakota Newspaper Association for hosting this event, and thank you for inviting me. You know, my name is George Sinner, and I'm proud to be your candidate from North Dakota for the only seat we have in the U.S. House. You know, I was born and raised here in North Dakota. I went to college here, graduated from college, went to work as a banker in a small town, Michigan, North Dakota. And there in Michigan, I married and found and married the prettiest, smartest girl I ever met, my wife, Margaret. And honestly, for 35 years, I've been honored to make a living serving the needs of our farmers, families, and small business people in the state, helping them create jobs, grow their farms, transition to the next generation. Now, I grew up in Castleton, working on a family farm, a farm that's been in my family for 5 generations. Growing up on a working farm with 10 siblings created a special bond for me, to my sisters, my brothers, and the land in which we farmed. It's special. But there was an important lesson that I learned there, lesson I learned from my parents, and that was that the work comes first. You want to go to town to watch a movie? No, the work comes first. You got a ball practice? No, the work comes first. You want to roll over in the morning rather than get out of bed and go feed the cattle? No, you get up. The work comes first. That's who we are, and that's what we did. Without a doubt, it was the single most important lesson I learned in my entire life. And it's a lesson I taught my children, Kate and Patrick, both college graduates. They learned the same thing. The work comes first. Now, my son Patrick is an aerospace engineer. He works for a company in Seattle. The other day he said to me, he said, "Dad, you know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that Congress is a dysfunctional mess." Why? Because they don't put the work first. They fight over who's going to be on camera. They fight over who's on the cable news shows. They fight about fighting. And with all this fighting going on, it's a wonder, honestly, anything gets done. Budgets aren't getting passed, our government's getting shut down, and our farm bills are delayed, putting our farmers and all those who rely on farm income at risk. Even our congressman voted to dismantle our farm bill, putting politics over everyone who relies on the agriculture sector for income. As our next congressman, I promise to make things different. I promise that I will do things different, a whole lot different. You know, growing up, my dad taught me a couple more lessons. One of them was, as an adult, you identify problems and you work to solve them. As a banker working in a small town, I never asked my customers what their politics was. I only asked them, how can I help you solve those problems? As your next member of Congress, I will represent North Dakota families and businesses with an independent voice, working with everyone, helping anyone, and never losing sight of the fact that the work comes first. Thank you.
Please hold your applause to the end. The The first question will be asked by Tom Monlaws, Trail County Tribune, and it will be for Jack.
With the recent reports suggest that the U.S. Postal Service would be operating in the black by now if it weren't for the congressional mandate that it prepay employee retirement benefits. Would you favor removing that mandate, and what are your beliefs upon requiring USPS to continue 6-day mail delivery?
Well, I would be in favor of removing that mandate, and I would take a long, hard look at the U.S. Postal Service. It's been losing money for quite some time now, and it's a government agency that's costing us as taxpayers millions of dollars every year, and I believe it's billions of dollars in debt as it currently stands. So anything we can do to help the U.S. Postal Service become solvent is a step in the right direction, and that may include ending the U.S. Postal Service and privatizing that industry. Turn it over to a private company that would pick it up and run it the right way. It's time that we make hard decisions, but when you're $17.5 trillion in debt and growing every day, this is the kind of conversation that I was talking about in my opening statement that we need to have. We need to think outside the box and come up with new ways to make these government programs work or just get them out of the way.
George?
Postal Service. You know what your question really asked was, do you believe in removing the mandate? Yes, I do. Today, the health care of the Postal Service is funded for 37 more years. You know, Article 1, Section 8, Clause number 7 of the U.S. Constitution established the Postal Service of the United States. It was written in our Constitution, and it is guaranteed under our original Constitution. And here's the thing. People in Bowman, North Dakota, or Michigan, North Dakota, deserve the same postal service that we're given to people in Fargo and New York City. And let's talk about something that's important to these folks, the Newspaper Association. What about delivery on Saturday? That's very important. And studies have shown that Saturday delivery is more efficient than just 5-day deliver and delivering more mail in the 5 days. That's my answer. Honestly, I believe that newspapers are so important to our state. They're one of the primary sources of delivering honest, comprehensive news. I think that the Postal Service is the best vehicle for delivering that. Thank you.
Quite honestly, most of the federal and quasi-federal agencies, much like many of the businesses in the United States, have shortfalls largely as a result of this very issue, and that is funding benefits well into the future, and this mandate probably should be removed and perhaps changed. I think we do have to be careful to not renege on an obligation to a bunch of people who took a job with the understanding that this was the deal when they took the job, and then to pull the rug out from under them upon retirement, I think is unfair. I think that's fundamentally unfair to a lot of people. So while it's easy to just say, sure, we're just going to do that because we have a $17.5 trillion debt, well, it plays pretty well in certain circles, but there is a reality and there's an obligation. Now let's remember about the Postal Service, and I think George makes a relevant point about the efficiency of 6-day delivery versus a 5-day delivery. We hear a lot of times that perhaps one of the things we ought to do is at least not deliver packages on a Saturday. That's one of the solutions that's been forwarded to a lot of people, which would undermine the very profitable part of the Postal Service that they actually have, and that's the opportunity to deliver packages on a Saturday. That's especially important in rural America. Now, George makes a point that rural folks deserve the same service as urban folks. I would submit to you that the underserved areas, the more expensive to serve areas, need a different view, perhaps, from Washington. The rich tradition of rural America is that the federal government steps in and provides opportunities for services, whether it's telephone, whether it's rural electric cooperatives, or even today the rural telephone co-ops delivering broadband, or the mail. So we can't have a one-size-fits-all formula for most things, and certainly we can't for the Postal Service. We need to help them be successful.
Our next question will be for George.
Whether you're for or against the Keystone XL pipeline, it has after more than 5 years, become an example of the inability of Washington to make decisions? Do you hold out any hope that the American public will ever again view the Congress and the federal government as anything more than futile political infighting?
Well, thank you for the question. Regarding the Keystone Pipeline, I want to be clear on that. I've been in favor of that since the beginning. I wrote a letter in support to Secretary Kerry, and I'm also in favor of the Sandpiper Pipeline. These are things that we need to deliver our commodities safely to the marketplace. Regarding the congressional role in this, I think the Congress has been pretty clear. Congress wants these pipelines, we need these pipelines, and we need to promote more agreements like this to get pipelines in place. Regarding the administration, I've done what I can so far. Now it's up to the people that are in Congress, in Washington, to get this done. We need pipelines to safely deliver our products to the marketplace, and that's all the more we can do. Will it be the only answer? No, it won't. We know that our commodities are growing by leaps and bounds, and they will over the next 5 years. We know that the oil coming out of our oil patch will continue to grow, and we need to find solutions to safely deliver all of this product to the marketplace, or we will face substantial discounts like some of our farmers are seeing today. Thank you.
Kevin?
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's a great question. That's why I was very proud of the fact that I was a co-sponsor and that we actually passed in the Republican-controlled House of Representatives the Northern Route Approval Act. We have deemed the Keystone Pipeline approved as studied. It's the most studied pipeline in the history of the world. The most studied in the history of the world. And by the way, to my liberal friends who think that it's such a bad idea because it's going to have a greater carbon footprint, because it's going to move oil sands from Alberta to the Gulf Coast, the fact of the matter is that according to the State Department's own analysis, it'll have a 44% less footprint than moving that oil by barge or train and truck. Not to mention it's a lot safer, a lot more efficient. My concern, to speak for a minute about the inaction in Washington on this topic, is that who you're going to vote for Speaker of the House will have a dramatic impact on whether or not the Keystone Pipeline can get passed in the next Congress by the House of Representatives. I'm very hopeful. You know, they claim that there are 60-some senators that support this. Yet I've never seen a Democrat senator who's in the majority party get their leader to call for a vote on the Keystone Pipeline. That's leadership. I'm proud to say that we got ours to vote on it, and we passed it. So it's very important who you vote for Speaker of the House, because I guarantee you, Speaker Pelosi will not allow a vote on the Keystone Pipeline in the House of Representatives, and she's voted against it when she's had the opportunity. I also want to mention this little fact. Not a single Democrat has ever voted against the Keystone Pipeline. Every vote that's been against the Keystone Pipeline in the House of Representatives no Republicans ever voted against it. No, the only votes against it have been Democrat votes. We cannot run the risk. We cannot run the risk of putting our towns in more jeopardy and safety on the rails in more jeopardy and the efficiency of moving products by electing Democrats to the House of Representatives who would let Nancy Pelosi run Washington.
Jack, same question.
I too would be 100% in favor of the Keystone XL pipeline, and I would be in favor of the Sandpiper pipeline. We need these pipelines to safely move our product to market. That being said, upon completion of the Keystone XL, it would only reduce our transportation needs by about 10%, and while that's not an insignificant number, that leaves 90% of the rest of our oil that we still need to get to market. So while we're working on these pipelines, I propose that we leave the federal government out of it and discuss things within the state of North Dakota about ways we can solve these transportation issues. Maybe we could talk to BNSF and work with them about laying new track, because more cars on the existing tracks is not the answer. I've spoken to a BNSF engineer, and he says it's like 5 o'clock in Los Angeles traffic out there. The trains just can't get anywhere. There's too many trains on the tracks trying to haul too much stuff. So perhaps the answer that North Dakota can take up and put together ourselves is laying dedicated tracks for this oil that gets the oil safely out of our state and keeps it away from population centers. My business in downtown Fargo is 100 feet from one of these tracks. I see these trains roll through all day, every day, and God forbid we have another derailment, especially in one of our cities. So I say that we look at other options And an option that I would be in favor of is laying additional track that would alleviate the traffic that's on the existing tracks and route that oil in a safer manner.
The next question will be from Mike and will be for Kevin Kramer.
Would you support federal funding of the Red River Diversion Project in its current form to provide permanent flood protection for Fargo-Moorhead?
Well, first of all, I'm very pleased that we've been able to pass in the House of Representatives the authorization through the Water Resources Development Act, which includes authorization for the Fargo diversion. The Senate has done the same, and it's in conference committee. Any hour within the next probably 48 hours, the House and Senate Conference Committee will pass, will vote on and pass out a conference report that we'll all get to vote on, probably as early as next week that we'll authorize it. With regard to appropriations, of course, the House of Representatives has a ban on earmarks. We're not allowed to earmark a project for appropriation. So it's really up to the President and his Office of Management and Budget to put it in his budget. The House of Representatives last year passed an appropriations bill that funded the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and water projects. The Senate never took it up. We passed several appropriations bills the Senate never took up last year. But what we did do is pass the appropriation for the administration's budget. So if somebody can get Barack Obama and OMB to put the funding in his budget, and it comes to us for the appropriation for the water and energy appropriations, I will certainly vote for it. Absolutely. I will tell you this, however. The Fargo diversion is an example of a lot of federal programs and projects. One of the things we did in our version of the bill in the House was we gave tremendous flexibility for non-federal funding of projects. So we would authorize them because they fall under our purview, but allow localities, states, even private enterprise to pay for projects, whether it's ports or diversions or whatever the case might be. Because when you go to the federal government for funding for projects, here's the news. The good news is they'll fund half of it. The bad news is the price is twice as much. You lose control and you gain nothing. That's just a little hint to North Dakota's policymakers.
I believe the question asked if I would support federal funding for the diversion in Fargo in its current form. And based on what I know about its current form, I would not. I think there's still a lot of questions that need to be addressed about the layout of the diversion. There's a big concern to the south of Fargo about staging that water and you know, taking current residents and current farmlands and current home sites and turning them into a floodwater staging area. What about the rights of those citizens? Do we displace those people for the good of Fargo? I don't know what the answer is exactly, but in its current form, I don't believe it's designed well enough to where I would vote for federal funding. Fargo has done a lot to protect themselves from water, and they'll continue to do a lot to protect themselves from water. And there needs to be a permanent solution at some point, but it needs to be a permanent solution that's going to work for everyone. So let's get the brightest minds, let's get the best guys on the case, and let's figure out a way where we can do it for less than $2 billion and not have to displace people that have lived in these homes for many, many years.
Thanks for the question again. Folks, I don't know if you know where I live. I live in District 46, South Fargo, which is south of I-94, east of 25th Street, in an area that floods worse than any district in the state of North Dakota. Over the past 10 years, my district and my neighborhood has flooded 6 times. Summer floods, spring floods. And let's just talk about what happened this last week. Does anybody know what happened in Fargo this last week? This last week, we had 3.5 inches of rain. The level of the Red River went from 18 feet to 28 feet, with 3 inches of rain across the basin. Folks, let me tell you something. We have got to find a permanent solution to the flooding problem in Fargo and protect that community. To date, with all the study that's been done, years and years and years and years of study, there's only one solution been presented. That's the FM diversion. I am fully in favor of the FM diversion. It will protect our community. And also, I'm in favor of helping those folks down south adjust to the changes. We know it's a dramatic change for them, and if anybody can come up with another solution, I am all in. I will work my hardest to find another solution. But so far, that hasn't been done. I've stood beside my neighbors throwing sandbags year after year after year. And every year, the flooding seems to get worse. Why? We don't know exactly why, but the water is coming in from all over the basin. Nobody wants to store the water, so we have to find a solution. So I am fully in favor, and I will work my darndest to get that FM diversion